Have you ever sidestepped a gut feeling and kept going toward the thing your gut told you to avoid, and then later you wish you hadn't? Believe me when I tell you that birth is no different. Only the regrets you can have when you ignore your gut about birth can have consequences that are too heavy to carry. So today, I want to talk to you about discerning that gut feeling and why it's so important not to ignore your gut intuition. Let's go. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey Mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse-midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. So a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Lauren about how she decided to change providers late in the game. And I know that I've talked about this quite a lot on this podcast, but today I want to dig into it even more because I keep getting emails and I keep getting messages from you guys really struggling with this one. And I think that our culture has kind of taught us that we're wrong if we don't just fall in lockstep with medical professionals, whoever they may be, even when our gut tells us it's not right. This is going to be a quick episode because, y'all, I have had quite the last week. My daughter had the C word, if you know what I mean, and it has been tough. I keep saying this last week has been a long year. It's real. It's been really hard. I've had to fall back on all of my nursing experience from years ago, basically just trying to keep our head above water here. So it's been tough. So this is going to be a quick one, but I keep, like I said, getting messages from you guys, and I know this is a hard one. So I want to dig in a little bit deeper, and I want to talk about these red flags, and I want to talk about how you can know how to discern through them. So just some quick thoughts about those gut feelings that you have in pregnancy, because that gut feeling is what caused me to break up with my midwife, which is a nice way to say fire her. And it led to me having a beautiful birth of my first baby. So many people say, oh, I'll just go into the system and I'll just deal with it for my first birth just to make sure everything is okay, just to make sure maybe my pelvis is big enough, to make sure that I don't have anything wrong or all these different things. And they don't realize that by doing that, they are setting themselves up for things to happen to them that didn't need to happen to them that then impact their ability to have choices in their future births. For me, because of my experience, I knew that, and I made some pretty hard decisions even with that very first baby. Had I ignored that gut feeling, my birth would have been full of stress, it would have been full of contention, and it would have probably ended in a transfer into the hospital mess. I just know what it was leading to. I knew I didn't trust her anymore. I knew that we were going to be button heads all through the labor process, and as I've told you so many times, you can't labor properly when you are stressed and when that part of your brain is activated. You have to be able to shut that off. And I knew I would not be able to shut that off with her. So I decided it couldn't go on. But even knowing what I know, even knowing what I knew then, I had a really hard time making that jump because I had no provider at term. I had no backup plan. So I'm sitting there just like you would be. What am I going to do now? How am I going to fire this midwife? I think when I first started having this feeling, I was maybe 38, 39 weeks. So, I mean, baby could come anytime, right? What am I going to do? Am I going to just walk in the door of a hospital when the baby comes? Am I going to have the baby at home by myself? What am I going to do? This was a big worry and a big thought process I had to go through. I literally stepped off the boat with nowhere to land. There was no dock. There was no other boat. I just stepped off in faith that something was going to work out. I did it anyway. And it led to a beautiful, peaceful birth that I had to drive 5 hours away to get. Do you think that was an easy thing to do? I mean, yeah, I knew people. I was in midwifery school at the time, so I had met a lot of people, and that was a good resource, of course. But even knowing people, it wasn't easy to say, sure, I'll drive 5 hours away and have a baby. Even that one decision took me 2 weeks to make. I didn't make that decision fully until I was 41 weeks and realized this is all I got. When my sweet, sweet midwife friend Lisa said, hey, I've got a new house. I'm too old to have babies now. Why don't you come christen my house? Have a baby here. And I thought, there's just no way I can do that. Until I'm 41 weeks and I'm like, yeah, I guess there is a way. I'm going to have to do it. It was tough. And everybody thought I was crazy. But by the way, get used to people thinking you're crazy in this world. When you go against conventional wisdom, which conventional wisdom now is you go to the hospital to have a birth. Why wouldn't you? People are going to think you're crazy. They're going to make comments, but I'm telling you right now, you're going to have to block them out. Who cares? They are marching along like lemmings into a system that doesn't care anything about them because they haven't quite figured it out yet. You have. That's why you're here. But even with being here, it's still hard. It's still hard to realize that it's okay to push back. It's okay to demand better care. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to deal with that gut feeling and not ignore it. So let's talk about some ways that you can know how to recognize these red flags. First thing I want you to think about is, how do you feel when you walk out of an appointment with your doctor or your midwife? How do you feel? What's your gut telling you when you're leaving? Do you feel heard? Do you feel better? Do you feel worse? When you walked in, usually you walk into an appointment, you've got something on your mind. Maybe, you've had this symptom or you've felt that thing and you're just wondering kind of what's going on. Do you feel like you have answers to those things that are logical and make sense? Or do you feel like your concerns were blown off? Do you feel better or do you feel worse? Do you feel like your desires and the things that you want, do you feel like they matter? Or do you feel like you're being guided into their desires and their policies? Do you feel like you're being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Or do you feel like you're being treated like you're pregnant and that's normal? Do they treat you like you're high risk, but your intuition is telling you that everything's okay and everything's normal? Do you feel like you're being pressured into tests or interventions that you don't think are necessary? And when you push back, how are you being treated? Let's say they want you to have some extra ultrasound or some extra test because they're worried about this, that, or the other. Maybe you're the dreaded advanced maternal age. You dared to be 36 when you got pregnant. And now they want you to have a slew of tests because you are supposedly high risk. If you push back against that, if you say, you know what, I feel like pregnancy is a normal thing and I feel healthy, feeling my baby move, I feel like everything is fine. If you push back with logical information, with well thought out rationale, how do they treat you? Do they treat you poorly? Do they treat you like you are a problem? Or do they listen to you and regard what you're saying? These questions are questions you need to be asking yourself on a regular basis as you assess, am I seeing red lights here? Am I seeing green lights? Am I seeing yellow lights? Am I seeing red flags, yellow flags, green flags? How am I feeling about this whole situation? Is there a sign here that I need to change something? What is a red light in life? You're driving your car. What's a red light? If you drive up to an intersection and the light is red, what do? You stop. You stop literally in your tracks. If you keep going, if you ignore a red light and you keep going, there is a very good chance that you'll have a crash. Or at the very least, if there happens to be a cop around, you might get a ticket. Either way, you're going to pay a price for running that red light. That red light is there to tell you to stop. It is not safe to proceed. You see where I'm going here? What's a yellow light when you're driving? A yellow light is a sign to slow down and get ready to stop. It's a warning that you need to slow down. It's time to stop. In this case of birth, it's time to slow down and stop and think. In driving, it's slow down and stop to prevent the crashes that we talked about just now or just before. If you speed up to get through that yellow light, you might be okay. If you just ignore it and you're like, I got to get through this. I don't have time for this. You speed up, you go through it. You might be okay, but you might not. You might not make it through that yellow light before it turns red, and you may end up in that crash as well. A yellow light does not go back to green, but without turning red first. It is a sign that you need to slow down and prepare to stop. It is not ever going to be a sign for you to speed up, right? That may be how some of y'all drive. That's a whole different topic, right? I'm just saying in general, yellow means it's time to slow down, stop. Red flags are red lights. Yellow flags are yellow lights. And yellow lights mean that a red light is coming. Okay, so when you see these red flags, that's kind of the, cultural term that we use. That was a red flag. Don't ignore the red flags. So a red flag is that red light. It means stop. This is a warning. You need to stop. A yellow flag means slow down. So maybe it's something that's not like a hard, like, whoa, we got to stop here. But it's something doesn't seem right. We need to slow down and assess this a little deeper. Remember those rules of the road and realize they apply to your gut feelings. It's interesting, as I was working on putting this podcast together, I was kind of scrolling through Instagram on one of my many distractions, because when you're as tired as I am right now, it's easy to get distracted. And a little post comes up by an account called Birth Uprising on Instagram, and it said, that little voice that's telling you that you should find a new OB or midwife because they make you uncomfortable is your intuition warning you about how your birth will be if you don't. And y'all, I fully believe, we talk all the time about women having a sixth sense. I think God put that there in us because we deal with so much. We have to be aware of so much to provide the care that we do to so many people. And that gut feeling is valid. I tell you guys that all the time. It is as valid as a blood test or an ultrasound or any other test result. Your gut feeling matters. If you see yellow flags, slow down to a stop and then think through what those flags are and what they mean. And are they valid? So maybe it's something that is a reason to slow down, or maybe they're pushing something towards you because it really is something you need to heed. Maybe there's really is something going on you need to be aware of. That's fine. But even in that, even if it is something that you need to be aware of, are they speaking to you as a human with a brain who can think through things as well? Or are they treating you like you don't have a clue what you're talking about? Because even if what they're telling you is valid, and even if what they're telling you, the testing or whatever that you need, maybe you really need it, if you don't feel like you're being heard, it's still a breakdown in communication, and it's a breakdown in care that is going to lead to problems later. If you see these yellow flags, slow down, stop, think through what they are, what they mean, and do you need to make a change? If you see red flags, do not sidestep them. And a red flag for this, I mean, like you walk out of your appointment in tears. I know so many of you have. You walk out and you can't believe what just happened. You can't believe the way they talk to you. You can't believe how you feel inside now. Not even necessarily about what they told you about your baby, but just the way they treated you. When you feel those red flags, when you see those red flags, do not sidestep them. Stop and find a way to make a change. Because if you don't, if you say, well, maybe they were just having a bad day, maybe next week will be better, and then you come back next week and it's more of the same. If you don't stop and make a change, you will likely end up in the land of regret, where trauma and unnecessary outcomes live. I'm telling you, there are countless mamas out there who live in that land. And if they could take you by your shoulders and shake you and tell you, don't ignore it, they would. Because they now know that they ignored something and they wish they hadn't. And now they're dealing with the consequences of not listening to their gut. In the land of regret, you carry guilt and you will feel like you failed. Even though you didn't, that's how you're going to feel. I'm not saying that you should be guilty or you should feel like you failed. I'm saying that I know so many women who have to process through these things to get to the point where they don't feel like they're complete failures. And that is not fair to you. You do not deserve that. You do not need that as a mother. And you can prevent it if you will get yourself to a place where you can boldly step forward and do what's right for yourself. Because then this whole birth trauma thing, so much of that comes from a feeling of disempowerment and things being done to you, and you had no voice. You had no say. They ignored you. You see where I'm going with this? So if you feel you're coming out of a prenatal appointment, we're not in labor here. Baby's not coming yet. You were in prenatal care. You at a visit, you walk out with that gut feeling of that was bad. Something wrong happened here. If you walk out with that feeling, that is a huge red flag that you need to stop right now, because if it's that bad now when there's no pressure of a birth happening in the next, couple hours, imagine what it will be like during birth. It will not be better. Okay? So I'm telling you right now that feeling of disempowerment and having things done to you and not being heard, if you're feeling those things now in prenatal care, you will feel them worse in birth and you will regret it. Stop. Make the change. If you heed the signs, the world may think you're crazy, but you will feel empowered and you will feel strong when you look back and see all the hard things you did to get the birth you deserve and to take the best care of yourself and your baby that you possibly could. Now, Mama, let me tell you, you should not have to do all this. I'm not saying in any way that you should have to do these things. But it's the maternity system we have. And you are going to have to work to get the birth that you deserve. But that work is going to give you the best non-monetary paycheck that you will ever have. Changing providers is hard. I know. I've done it. But having a birth with unnecessary interventions is also hard. Choose your hard. It's hard either way. So my advice is to do the hard thing now before labor hits. Because once labor is here, then you're going to deal with a whole different kind of hard. And that kind of hard is disempowering. And I don't want you to walk through your life as a mother. I don't want you to start your transition into motherhood with these things on your shoulders. You've got your hands full with a precious baby to take care of. That needs to be all you worry about, not about the things you didn't do that you wish you had done. And I know it's hard. You may have to drive 5 hours. You may have to fly across the country. I don't know where you live. I don't know what you have available to you. I don't know any of those things. And everybody's situation is different. You may be listening to me saying, well, she just doesn't get this. We don't have money for this. We don't have this. We don't have that. No, I do know. And like I said, you shouldn't be having to do this. And I'm sorry that you do. But I'm telling you that any sacrifice that you have to make to get the birth that you should have is 300% worth it. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, if this seems undoable, I want you to go back and listen to episode 106 when I talked to Lauren, who listened to her gut, and she made the hard changes to get her birth that she deserved. Sometimes it's just good to hear that it can be done. So you hear her and you hear me. A good book to go read if you would like some birth stories of women who, many of them started with a birth that went wrong. And then with their second birth, they traveled to the farm down in Tennessee and had their births there and had a completely different experience. That's hard. I mean, traveling to a different state. Some of these people came from other countries, from as far away as New York and different places like that. But they knew that in order to have the care that they deserved, they were going to have to get to a provider who believed in birth and believed birth was normal and believed that they were normal. And that book is called Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and I'll put a link to it down in the show notes. It's also on my webpage, on my resources page. It's always there because it's one of the best books you can read. The first half of that book is all birth stories. If you need birth stories, if you need to be reassured that this is something that you can actually do, it's a great place to start. But you got Lauren's story, you've got my story, you've got the Anna Mae book. There's lots and lots of people out there. Okay, there's lots of people who have seen it firsthand for themselves and realized, wow, I really should have listened to those red flags. Now, if you need help discerning those green flags, red flags, yellow flags that we've just talked about based on God's word and the evidence with someone in your corner who is truly here for you and not for anyone else, I would love to have you come join the Your Birth God's Way online Christian childbirth education course that I have on my website. And there you're going to learn everything that you need to know for how to step into this place of confidence and empowerment, because knowledge is power, mama. And you're going to walk away from that course with a ton of knowledge so that you can then feel confident in the decisions you're making. You can feel confident to know if the thing that they're telling you that's giving you that feeling in your stomach, is that a true thing? Or is that something they're just doing to manipulate you? You will walk out of that course able to do that. So if that sounds like something you need, go check it out on my website, go.yourbirthgodsway.com. There's links down in the show notes to all the different things. You can find it pretty easy down there. So go do that now. I don't want you to walk through pregnancy feeling like you're just wandering aimlessly. There's so many resources out there, and my course is one of the most complete ones you'll find. So I hope that you'll come join us over there. And I want to see you pop up on my roster. I want to see you at our next live question and answer session, because that's another thing that comes with the course. If you didn't know that, we have live question and answer sessions over Zoom or sometimes Google Meet. Either way, on video, face-to-face, where we can see each other and talk. We've got the next one coming up in about a week or so. I can't remember. I don't have my calendar in front of us. So if you hop in right now, you'll get an invitation to that. You'll be able to come join us, ask your questions, get your answers, and feel empowered so that you can make great decisions. So go do that now. I'll see you in the course, and I'll also see you back right here next week. Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you, so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.